I'm a 31-year-old single guy who lives alone in an apartment complex. I've lived there for 6 years. My neighbor across the hall, a woman around my age or a little younger, I actually don't know her first name, but I'll call her Katie, lives across the hall from me diagonally and has for about 2 years. We exchange hellos but aren't friendly, which is how it is with most of my neighbors. So I don't know how to cook, and due to losing one of my part-time gigs, I don't have as much money for takeout anymore. I'm getting really sick of eating cheap fast food or box mac and cheese. I'm gaining weight and I never feel great. This is where Katie comes in. I can always smell her cooking in the hall, and it always smells amazing. I know it isn't the other person at our end of our hall, because it's a single old man. I've even complimented it a few times. So I got the idea that I'd offer to give her some money each week to cook a little extra and bring it over to me, or I can pick it up from her. At night. She's cooking anyway, and then I'd have varied, presumably delicious food. I asked her the next time I saw her, and she looked surprised and said she couldn't because she was too busy, which didn't make sense because she cooks almost every day, but okay. The next time I saw her a few days later, I asked her if she was sure and up the amount I was offering, and she said she was sure and that it was rude to ask me, and that she isn't a housekeeper for hire, and I should get a housekeeper if that's what I want. She also called me a stranger, even though we have talked in the halls before. Overall, she made me feel like a big jerk and really embarrassed for even asking her, and a little mad because she was acting like I was being creepy. I wasn't, trust me, she isn't my type. I think asking her to split cooking wasn't completely outlandish since she cooks every day anyway and it wouldn't be hard to make a little more. So, am I the idiot? You're the idiot. Just because something makes sense to you doesn't mean she should just jump on your bandwagon. If I was vacuuming my apartment and my neighbor knocked on the door and asked if I could vacuum theirs for $5, I'd be weirded out. I'm vacuuming my apartment, not advertising a business. You're offering to pay her, but she'd have to buy extra, modify her recipes, spend more time making more food, and then package it all up for you, and then bring it to you. It's really pretentious of you, just because you think someone has the time and energy to do something that they should. This post made me so angry. You don't know her name, but you got offended when she called you stranger. You asked her to cook for you, she said she's busy aka being polite, and asked her again is she sure about that. You got offended. When she didn't want to cook for you. Just because she is a woman, judging by the comment on old man this is your mindset probably, she is obliged to cook for you. You are a grown man. Cook. You should know how to take care for yourself. Unbelievable. You're the idiot. You're the idiot. Once is strange, but not an idiot move. To ask again after you were shot down makes you the idiot. It is a very strange proposal to begin with, and you are presuming a lot. I am guessing you wouldn't ask any of the other neighbors the same question, even if their food smelled good, because I am guessing you had more in mind than just food. She has made it clear that she is not interested in cooking for you, not interested in getting to know you better, etc., so you should respect her boundaries and leave her be. When my sister was 1 year old, my parents didn't want her in their bed anymore, and she was eager to sleep in mine, so my parents let her share a bed with me. I was 12 at the time. According to my parents, I wouldn't sleep by myself until I was 3 years old, so I figured that they would help me introduce her to sleep on her own when the time came. Also, she already had her own room, with a crib that was I believe appropriate for 0 to 5-year-olds. It was one of those cribs that you could rebuild into a proper bed. So basically, my parents had prepared in advance for my sister to learn. However, skip 5 years and my sister, now almost 7, is still sleeping in my bed. I am almost 18 and about to start uni in September. Many times during these last years, I wanted to sleep by myself since I feel uncomfortable being a teen, almost an adult, and still having to share a bed with her. I wanted a room for myself again where I could stay up late if I had to in order to complete homework and research. Whenever I tried talking to my parents about this, they always shut me down and said it would be worse if she didn't want to sleep with you because it would mean that she doesn't like you. They think I'm selfish for wanting to kick my sister out of my bed, despite the fact that we already have a bed for her. She's never even used it, except from when she was a baby. I have tried taking matters into my own hands many times. I'd stay in her room and sit next to her until she fell asleep in her own bed. That never worked, she just wanted to go to sleep in my room. When she fell asleep in my bed, I'd pick her up and take her to her own bed. She'd always come back to my room in the middle of the night. I'd leave a nightlight on in her room and have her try to sleep with her favorite teddies so she wouldn't feel alone. That also never worked. Now, my parents are frustrated that when I go to sleep early, I don't take my sister up to my room with me. They're frustrated by my questions of when my sister will be able to sleep by herself, and they call me ungrateful for not wanting to share my bed. I just don't understand why I'm being ignored in this situation. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Have you thought about you sleeping in or taking her to your parents' room? Your parents pulled the lazy parent, let the older siblings deal with it move. Now, you can start returning the favor. But also make sure to let your sister know you love and care for her no matter what. Make sure to tell her. Kids tend to feel unloved and rejected for little things like this. She is just too young to understand that you just need your personal space. So be sure to say it to her. At that age I had my boyfriend over and stayed up all night on AIM and naps to rocking out. Or I was out of the house until 2 a.m. because I had a job until midnight and grandma truly couldn't enforce a curfew that late. You wanna sleep in my bed and not be a normal kid? I'm gonna sleep on your floor, in my car, at my boyfriend's, or stay up so late it makes your life hell. I sure as hell couldn't change my parents or grandparents, but I can live my life in my room and they can pound sand. Start moving furniture to her room. See what happens. You are not the idiot, it's your parents' job to raise your sister, not yours. They should not be shifting the blame to you and making you feel bad about wanting your own personal space. If the issue was a lack of space, there's not much you could do until you moved out. If she has her own room, mom and dad need to work on transitioning her to her own room before you leave for college, or else they are going to have a rough time when she is abruptly cut off from sharing a bed with you. That's totally not your job, though. I'm a 22-year-old female. A family friend and neighbor has a large backyard that they love to throw parties in. My family is pretty close with them and usually goes whenever there's a party. If I'm busy with something, my parents don't care if I miss these events, but if I don't have any plans they make me go with them and my younger siblings. Over the past 2 or so years, a couple of my dad's friends or adults in the neighborhood have been sorta creepy to me at these events. They sometimes make remarks about why I don't have a boyfriend and how they find it strange. Maybe it's not that weird, but it kinda creeps me out. Or if I go grab a beer, they try to draw out convos about me being old enough to drink now, or asking me about my alcohol preferences. On the day of this party, I was already having a crappy day since I fought with my mom earlier and I was sort of on edge at the party. I was hanging out in the pool and I went to get out because I had to pee. I felt eyes on me, like some of the men at this party were treating me like I was that girl in the pool scene in Fast Times. I had sunglasses on and ended up making eye contact with the house owner, who seemed to space out with his eyes resting on me as I walked inside the house. After using the restroom and feeling very uncomfortable, I walked back home and changed out of the bikini I was wearing and put on the ugly one piece I had to wear in high school swim class. I arrived back at the pool and swam when my mom called me over to her and a group of neighbors and adults at the party. She asked me why I left and put on another swimsuit. I said something like I was feeling uncomfortable with all these men who are dad's age staring at me. An awkward silence filled the area, and my mom looked at me signaling, "Are you freaking kidding me?" I asked her why she was looking at me that way. She apologized to the adults and I walked away. After sitting in the hot tub for a bit, my dad came up to me and sort of whispered that he heard what I said and it made a lot of people uncomfortable and maybe I should apologize. I barked at my dad loudly, and to this point people were looking at me. I yelled for him to tell Mr. Last Name to stop being a freaking pervert then. At this point, the man who I named Drop's wife started yelling at me, telling me I'm a little punk and I need more respect for my elders. And how disgusting it was of me to accuse people of that. I just told her don't worry, your husband wasn't the only one who was staring, and I am very uncomfortable that the neighbors who knew me since I was a toddler now ogle over me in my swimsuit. One adult man there spoke up and said he was sorry that he wasn't looking at me, but if I thought he was, he's very sorry for the misunderstanding. I told my parents I was going home. My parents returned an hour or so later and promptly stormed me out for embarrassing them and making the entire party awkward. Did I go too far? You're the idiot. I will say, if men were indeed checking you out, you are completely in the right calling them on it. But your whole post sounds a lot like your personal perception versus reality. I mean, come on. Fast times. Really? Older doesn't default to creepy, and striking up a conversation about alcohol you like is pretty common. If they were lingering or making comments that were rude, sure. But you don't say that. I bet you had a lot less eyes on you than you assumed. Everyone's the idiot here. Sorry, these men were making very normal conversation for your age. Saying you felt eyes on you and saw someone leering is plenty enough justification to cover up, but is not harassing you. It wasn't excessive or all day, and he literally could have been just spacing out. You're self-conscious OP, not everyone's thinking about making love with you all the time. Accusing married family friends of harassing a 22-year-old is a big deal. And shouldn't be done unless you're actually being harassed. Your mom should have asked in private and not flipped. You're the idiot. What you described are what's called illusions of grandeur. Not everything is about you, and I'm sure most people at this party were paying little to no attention to you. Literally everything you described in your post was based on your own feelings and perceptions of yourself and the others around you. You imagined yourself as being in a movie scene where a woman is objectified and treated your situation in reality as if that were what was happening. Just because you think you're hot stuff doesn't mean every man around you does. I've been married to my current wife for 5 years. Her 2 daughters live with us, 17, 12. I have 2 kids of my own, my daughter is 24 and my son will be 16 next month. Last year, when my stepdaughter turned 16, my wife wanted to get her car. I agreed and said I would help pay as well. I make considerably more than my wife, so I had a feeling I'd be covering most of it, considering my wife's ex-husband wanted no part of it. He always says he has no money and completely shut down the notion of him contributing to his daughter's car because he has no money. My wife and I bought her a 2009 Chevy Malibu. It's in great shape for having over 100k miles on it. We thought it would be a great first car and she loved the gift. Fast forward to the beginning of this March, knowing my son was turning 16 in April, I talked to my wife about getting my son a car. And then I talked to my ex-wife about it because that is who my son lives with most of the time. My ex-wife has a good job and makes a healthy living. My ex-wife said she would be willing to split the cost of a car with me. We ended up finding him a 2015 Jeep Wrangler 4-door. Beautiful car and we got it for a steal. The car has been at my house since we are waiting for his birthday, and over the last week or so my wife broke her frustrations to me. She said she didn't want to think anything of it, but her daughter came to her questioning the much nicer car for my son. My wife didn't think much at first I guess, but the longer it sat with her, the more it pissed her off I guess. It got to the point where wife and stepdaughter talked with me about maybe getting stepdaughter a nicer car for her high school graduation. Sometimes I can be a jerk when I get frustrated, and I told them how I spent about the same amount of money on my stepdaughter's car as I did the Jeep. This is part true, the Jeep cost me an extra $1,400, but I don't think it was a vast difference. I then proceeded to say if she wanted a nicer car, go call up her father and have this conversation with him. I told them how my wife was willing to split the cost, and that's why my son got the Jeep. I told both of them that I did all I could, and it's not my fault that my ex-wife was willing to split the cost. And if they are really looking for someone to blame then to call her idiot of a father. My stepdaughter left crying, and my wife told me that it's not her daughter's fault that her father is a piece of crap. And that she's sorry she can only work part-time at the animal shelter. I explained that I'm sorry that she feels she's being cheated with the cars, but I thought it was very generous of me to buy her that car in the first place. And I can't be blamed that my ex was willing to help when my wife's ex wouldn't. Am I the idiot? No idiots here. Seems like everybody could have acted a bit better in the situation, but it's not in everyone's the idiot here situation. While I understand your frustration to have to deal with such a situation when you did contribute to stepdaughter's car while her own dad didn't, it wasn't necessary to insult him. Your stepdaughter should be grateful. It's not having if you only bought a car for your son. Your wife, to me, is the biggest idiot here. You gave the same amount to both kids. She shouldn't expect you to pay more because your ex-wife contributed to your son's car. Not the idiot, and everyone's the idiot here. Your ex was willing to split the cost, however it perhaps would have been best to find a similarly priced vehicle as your stepdaughter's car. Approaching you to buy a second car because she wants a nicer one or as nice as your son while her and her mother are unable to contribute the extra is ridiculous. However, bringing up her deadbeat father and his seeming lack of care for her was where you crossed the line. You could have handled that confrontation better. Not the idiot, and asking for a second car in 2 years makes the wife and daughter are idiots in my opinion. Once you explained the ex-wife matching you, that should have been sufficient. If you contributed an extra $1,400 to his car, I guess I could see that being a bit of a bummer for her, but at the same time she still got a really great gift and needs to learn to be grateful for what she has been given. You don't owe them cars. Those are really nice gifts, and the entitled petulance is a bit extra. I'll try to keep this quick. For his birthday last month, I, 43, bought my son, 13, a Nintendo Switch console and a few games, one of them being Animal Crossing, as well as a year subscription to the service that lets him play with his friends. I was making dinner when my daughter, 16, came in and told me he was using the game to bully other kids on a program called Discord. I had played the game a little bit myself. I like to test play anything I give my kids in case it's not appropriate, and wasn't sure what she was talking about. She showed me a post someone had made on another social media account about how some kid invited people over to their island. My son and a few of his friends showed up and somehow ruined the other kid's game. I didn't really understand most of it, but my daughter explained he put inappropriate images on the little characters' clothes, dug up all their trees and grass, and generally undid what my daughter described as several weeks' worth of work. I was pretty angry, because upon further research I was able to decipher that the kid my son and his friends harassed in the game was very young, around 9 or so, and my son should be old enough to know that isn't appropriate. I sat down and talked to him about it, and he was not apologetic at all. I explained that picking on younger kids in a game meant to be nice and collaborative was something only a loser would do. He got upset and started crying and hasn't talked to me since. My husband says I was way overreacting, but I feel like my son is acting like a child and a bully. He doesn't respond to me explaining why it's not appropriate. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. It would break my heart as a 32-year-old woman if I invited a group over to my island only to have it destroyed. Animal Crossing is generally a sweet game that depends on the goodness of the players. There are some measures to stop this kind of stuff from happening, but I can see a 9-year-old kid putting randoms on his best friends list and putting himself at risk. Even so, that is so upsetting. You drove the point home. If he's sad, he should think about how that poor kid felt. Not the idiot, and why the hell aren't you confiscating his Switch? Imagine if a neighbor had an award-winning garden that they took pride in and your son went over there and trashed it. Would you just sit him down and explain how it was wrong? No, you would punish him and then send him over every weekend until he made it right. This is not someone that should be allowed to continue to be allowed multiplayer games, bonus points if you delete his account, so he has to start from scratch. Let him know how it feels. My son is 8 and gets hit like this every couple months. Last time was on Roblox, and he had done chores to earn $15 to put on his game to buy a dragon. Someone was able to steal the dragon, and it doesn't even show up on his transaction history. Roblox and the game creator just keep pushing blame back and forth while I had to deal with several days of crying. The dragon was no longer available for sale, so I could do nothing to make it right. It was awful and people should be held accountable for that stuff.